is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. I am one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside the Italian stallion, the stud himself, that beautiful bastard with that divine hair. Look at that. Jeff Iafrady. Jeff, it's really good to see you, my guy. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's good to be back. It's an exciting time. I can't believe I'm saying that, but the season's officially, kind of wrapping up here. So we get to,
Mercifully, it
yeah,
is over.
and that's why it's an exciting time. All the losses are over with. We get to talk about hope. We get to talk about some optimism, maybe some things what the almost said Lions, the Pistons should do moving forward. And they had their end of the season press conference today. The players spoke, so I can't wait to get into it, Sean. I'm excited.
It's almost like you do Lions content for a lot of, like, what you do. It's crazy. It's almost like
Yeah,
you get
I
used to.
wish the Pistons would give me a reason to mention them. All love to the organization, but man, that's a as of right now, won't speak forever. As of right now, fortunately, it's a ratings killer. So
Yeah.
that's why I get to go on here and we get to do it because we have basketball fans that want to listen. Lions fans sometimes are like, "Who cares? I don't want to hear about the Pistons,"
Well,
But
and listen, it's going to be an interesting coming months. I'm gonna imagine with the speculation, with the draft
mhm.
talk, with trades, free agency, it's about to get, way more
Yep.
interesting. The heat is about to intensify, especially, with the news that dropped as of recording today. We're about to dive into that and more, but this is from Half Court, where normally each and every week we come and join you and talk all things basketball. My computer was in the shop last week. That is why there was not an episode. I know, shame Sean, put the dunce cap on me. Go myself. But if you like this podcast, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our uploads when we have any content, live streams, videos, breaking news, all that stuff. You're going to want to be right here. But also be sure you follow my guys and everything they're doing, like my guy Jeff Iafrady, well, such as him doing the Crunch Time podcast Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. But also be sure you go check out their draft party next week for the NFL draft with the questionable clothing brand. Jeff, what can people expect if they do ultimately go to this lit draft party?
Well, I appreciate you, Sean, for bringing it up. Yeah, buy your tickets. Week out. Next week is really the final week. It'll be crunch time, no pun intended. Then, but until then, get your tickets. If people want to come downtown, it's going to be harder, I think, than people actually realize to get down there. So if you want a
Aren't they
VIP
expecting
party,
at least 1 million people for the
oh, it,
draft?
it's unbelievable. The streets are going to be filled. Bars are going to be filled. If you want a VIP party, we're selling tickets. Again, free drinks to all night. Former Lions, former Red Wings players. It'll be a lot of fun. Rooftop bar and everything. I mean, come hang out with us. React to Brad Holmes cooking in the kitchen once again. We'll have a live show and everything. So come check it out. Bookie's Bar and Grill, man. Get your tickets now because next week, can't promise they'll be there.
It's going to be an exciting time. And if you want to celebrate with some of the best minds in Detroit sports and upcoming personalities in Detroit
Yep.
media, that's going to be a great place to be. But
And also, real quick, all profits for that help out Michigan Children's Hospital. So it all goes for a charitable cause. I just want to mention that's the main thing to mention. Really, it's all for a good cause. So
all about the
get your
kids
tickets.
here from Half Court, Jeff. That's what I
Yeah.
like to see.
Yep.
And over at Crunch Time too. And let's be honest, that pun was very much intended, you bastard. We all know it. You could come and go, oh, no pun intended. But it was intended, and we appreciate you for your cleverness. But anyway, Jeff, let's talk about the breaking news that broke, within an hour of us starting this podcast. And it's something that, we have heard rumblings about for quite a while. We've gotten speculation, ahead of time saying that this is a very much a possibility. But per
Mhm.
Shams Charania, after a disappointing 14-68 season, 14-68, just to reemphasize that, the Detroit Pistons have decided to hire a new head of basketball operations, in parentheses, president, and will begin their search process this week, sources tell The Athletic. Now, Jeff, this was a reality that we kind of, have foreseen coming for quite a while now.
Mhm.
There has not been anything that has been said about the overall job security of Monty Williams or Troy Weaver, but you would also at the same time imagine that that's going to depend on who they bring in, to be the president of basketball ops. Jeff, just gut reaction seeing this news. What is your reaction? What are your thoughts? are there any, names that even stick out on the, top of your head? Are you weary of Detroit going after the big name kind of like they did in the coaching market? Where are you at with this?
I love this, and I know it's been hard for Pistons fans to say that for at least this season. When something happens, I love it, but this I do love. You need a president of basketball operations. I mean, look what it did for the Timberwolves when they brought in Tim Connolly. I think it matters. Most good organizations, you have a president of basketball operations. Now, who is that? Ideally, would be great if you can convince Bob Myers to come back into the NBA and work for you. But even someone that has had success. I mean, Tim Connolly with the Timberwolves. I mean, he was working with the Denver Nuggets for a while there. So someone with some sort of resume, you're gonna have to pay for him though. But somebody that also you'll allow to make decisions. I think that's the key part of this. You can't just go bring in someone. You need to bring in someone to convince them. Kind of like what you did, Monty, where you pitch them on the Pistons, but not just that. You pitch them on control. You're like, listen, we need help. We need someone that knows what they're doing. You'll have the ability to get rid of people, to add people. You can make the changes desire, and there won't be much of pushback. And like I think that matters too, because if you're trying to get a president of basketball operations, but they're limited, that's going to hurt a lot of the candidates, especially guys that have resumes that have had success. They want more control, and I think for Tom, if you want to go get someone good, it's going to be hell of a pitch. It's the Pistons, but you can at least pitch control and pitch, hey, you can kind of create this thing how you want. We just need someone to help run this thing. We said it about Troy a lot. Like Troy, I think identifying talent, people can nitpick and bring up things that picks he's missed on. Which okay, fair. Killian Hayes would be the obvious one, but
Every
I
general
wouldn't.
manager in the league is missed on a pick.
Exactly. But I think for Troy, I haven't had as much of a problem with his drafting as much as I've had other things with being a GM. And I think having a president of basketball operations kind of to blanket everything that Troy can't do, it's certainly going to help Sean. So this is honestly great news. It's self awareness in a way from Tom Gores. And I think that's exactly what they need right now. It's just
Yeah,
someone else in the kitchen, not to add on to the cooks, but like a senior chef in a way to kind of
yeah.
control the cooks. That's what they
Getting
need.
the Gordon Ramsay that tells everyone to shut the
Yes.
up, says what to work on and
Yes.
when, what to do and why, and sets what direction the kitchen's going. Like that's
Bingo.
kind of been the rumbling ever since the Monty Williams hiring is just the amount of decision makers that are in that room, the amount of people that are having their say in the vision and direction. And
Mhm.
especially when there isn't that defined hierarchy, which is, not what Detroit had in their front office for years. The last president of basketball operations that the Pistons had is Stan Van Gundy. So this has been a void in their front office, for a while. And even though Troy Weaver, for all intents and purposes, he was the head of basketball ops, he was the decision maker in that light. Then you throw in, well, Arn Tellem. He's like one of the COOs of the team. He has a very high ranking seat. He's an advisor to Tom Gores. Tom Gores, inevitably with the way that things were going, wanted to get more involved. And when you have your owner having to have active conversations with your coach about rotations and like having to do those types of things on a day-to-day basis, that's a sign that you need that there's a problem and that there's more structural leadership needed from the top down. So ultimately, what matters, just like getting the number one pick, as we said before, is like or getting a great pick is fantastic. It's what you do with it. Get hiring and searching for a new president is a great next step. But as we've seen, in the past of this franchise before, and as we've seen throughout pro sports, it's very imperative that you get the right guy making those decisions. And you brought up a couple names that I think obviously are going to be, that fans are going to talk about. I think the far less likely one being Bob Myers, just because of the fact that he's not even he's in media, he's just vibing. He for whatever reason was doing work with the Washington
Yeah.
Commanders.
Changing sports.
Oh yeah, 100%. I would imagine if Bob Myers is going to be an executive of a basketball team again, it's gonna be like the New York Knicks or
Yeah.
the Boston Celtics or the Los Angeles Lakers, and they're gonna have to throw him a bag, you know?
Yeah.
But a guy that you did mention, Tim Connolly, is an interesting name because obviously you would think that Minnesota is gonna do everything that they can to try and keep him, but there's the ongoing, uh legal issues between Alex Rodriguez and that ownership group and the former owner and who's actually going to own the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that's going to be a whole thing. But then, on top of that, there's, are they going to have the money, them being a second apron team? They're gonna
Right.
have to dip deep into their pockets, to keep that team together. Are they going to do the same to keep that president on staff? So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But obviously it's very early. What we know as far as potential candidates is very limited. On Twitter, there's been a lot of conversation based off of an article that James Edwards III did listing, potential candidates. And someone he threw out there as as someone as kind of a far-fetched idea was Dwayne Casey. And, I understand the concept of it. I think people on Twitter are reacting a little too heavily to it. As much as, Dwayne Casey has had a role in the front office. I personally just don't think it makes sense to just put someone in that seat who's already been in the building, who's already working in your front office when, that also just doesn't really seem, especially with Dwayne Casey wanting to take a step back and focus more on family, that just doesn't
Right.
seem like a role that makes sense for him. So, Jeff, are you aligned with me in thinking that people are kind of overreacting to that one a little too much?
Yeah, I if it were an actual possibility, I think I would be very much against it. But I'm with you. It's probably not worth even reacting over. You have to think too in any business, especially a business that's not doing very well at the moment. It's better to bring in a fresh mind. It's better to bring in a different perspective, someone that can come into your organization with a fresh mind, someone that has new ideas, a different outlook, rather than keep somebody that's again, it's just recycling at this point. And it's not a shot at Dwayne, but you'd much rather get someone who's proven that has already done this at a high level. It just doesn't make sense the Dwayne Casey one. So
I mean, he's
I
been
hope
in the
that
organization for coming up on what, like 7, 8 years now?
yeah, and I'm sure he's he's a big part of what they're doing behind the scenes. But in terms of like president of basketball operations, I don't believe. I think he's only been a head coach, and now he's got front office experience, and he's had coaching experience. I don't think he's ever had that type of experience. To kind of test the waters with a team that desperately needs it would be I think a terrible situation personally.
Based on his credentials, I would say that, if he was interested in entering a front office role, I would say he would certainly be a qualified candidate. I mean, for God's sakes, Lawrence Frank is the executive of the Los Angeles Clippers, and he was, a historically bad coach at points. But, I really think again, it's just, where he is in his life in comparison to a lot of these other, guys that do make that transition. I mean, Dwayne Casey was the oldest coach in the league, like second to Pop when he was, transitioning out of that position. So again,
Right.
me, I just don't think it makes sense. And again, you look at the Pistons making, having an overall autopsy of their organization, where things have gone wrong. Like you said, that perspective of someone who can be brutally honest, who can come in, who has no personal ties or any personal feelings towards the way that things have gone in the past. Just someone who could objectively say, this needs to change.
Hmm. Yeah, and somebody that again, no prior relationships with it, and that helps when you make tough decisions. Like with, and I don't know. Again, I'm not saying Dwayne can't make tough decisions. I'm not saying that at all. But I think it'd be easier if you brought in someone that has had success building successful programs or successful teams, organizations, and they could come in, not really know much of anybody, or and it does really not have a relationship with anybody, and they could just be like, "Hey, man, you're not getting the job done. Get out of here. I'll see you later. I can make these changes." Like
Yep,
with Dwayne, it'll be a little tougher because he's so familiar with everybody. Like it'll be, I just want someone with fresh ideas and somebody that
yep,
has been a part of winning. And again, not a shot at Dwayne, but that's why I brought up Tim Connolly because seems like everywhere he's gone, they just win, and that to me is
yep,
intriguing. So
yeah.
that's what I want. That's what
100%.
I'm looking for.
Again, that's if he's available. I would
Right,
imagine
or
I would
someone like that.
imagine
Yeah,
yeah, I would imagine that Minnesota's gonna do everything in their power to try and hold on to him, but, you can look at people under his tutelage in Minnesota. You can look at, prominent successful people throughout the league. There's the general manager of the Milwaukee Bucks, who if you gave him more control, more power, a young player, to build around, especially when they're a team that in the next couple of years, you don't know what the Milwaukee Bucks realistically will look like. You know, that's certainly an avenue that you could look at. But, speaking of whoever, that president is, like whoever that person is, they're going to have a lot of difficult decisions that they're going to have to make. And
right.
evidently, the first decision that they're going to have to make whenever they come in is more than likely going to be, do I keep or do I part with my general manager and my head coach? Because for all intents and purposes, I think whoever is brought into this position to lead the new basketball operations is going to have the say if they are truly being the head of basketball operations, will have the say on who will be their general manager and who will be their head coach. Now, I personally think that it is more likely that we see a parting of Troy Weaver than we do with Monty Williams, just because I would imagine that, financially, contractually, there would be a lot of reasons, for the organization to really want to make the Monty Williams situation work. Even if Troy Weaver is also someone who had an extension and has money owed to him, that's easier to part with than a 8-year, $80 million contract, that's tied to your head coach. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and there's more evidence that would suggest Monty could work. Like, and I think with Troy being his first GM job, you're probably more confident in Monty than you are with Troy turning things around. Um, and also, that is going to be the biggest decision. And I'm curious again. That goes back to how much control are you giving the president of basketball operations? I would assume that he hires in new eyes in the front office. Maybe that's including general manager, but certainly, he's going to fire people. I mean, if you've lost as many games as they have, like there's going to be a lot of guys that are no longer part of the organization. I would assume any president you bring in will like Monty. Monty's well respected. He's won in this league or gotten to the NBA Finals and certainly had a chance to win. So he's had success. So I think Monty's going to stay. Troy's probably going to be on the way out.
Yeah.
But I do want to add this too, at least when you look at president of basketball operations. One thing, because I was looking at Bob Myers' career too, and I forgot he was even he was an agent before he was a GM or assistant GM, then became GM. And that's something that, is interesting about president of basketball operations. If you bring in somebody that has a lot of relationships in the NBA, and again, for a team like Detroit, which it's going to be hard to sell just the team, not obviously the franchise. People would like to play for the Pistons, but just with what they've done over the last couple of years, which is really little to nothing, getting a president of basketball operations that has relationships, that knows players, familiar with a lot of faces, I think can certainly help as well. I just want to add that in there because it's funny. Bob Myers was an agent. Rob Pelinka, former agent. Say what you want about Rob Pelinka, but he makes things happen. He knows a lot of people in the NBA, so that's
Leon
certainly.
Rose,
Yep, Leon
agent.
Rose, another one, great one. So it seems like agents are becoming more popular when you look at those guys.
Yeah,
Former
100%.
agents.
I mean, and again, honestly, nothing's off the table when you have 2 back-to-back, franchise, worst franchise history seasons.
Right.
Those are things that are definitely not off the table. So, again, it's going to be really interesting to see, what happens. And, player-wise, we've talked a lot about, who those building blocks are going to be and, what everything looks like. I mean, if I'm the president of basketball operations, I look at Cade Cunningham, and then we figure out the rest later. And so,
Hmm.
especially, when we know where we're picking, when we know, like what we're actually going to have available, which there is that $60 million in cap space to work with. So it's not like this is a team that is in desperate need of change that doesn't have the room or the flexibility to make that change. But they better be right because the way that things have been going, you can't follow up this type of season with another bottom 3, bottom 4 standing where, your season's done before the new year even hits. That's just when you're facing that type of reality year after year after year, the cycle has to stop at some point.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think Cade Cunningham, I mean, even seen, this is my new nickname for him, by the way. I don't know if it's already created, but I'm debuting it today. Uh, Fontecchio. We're calling him Tech 19. That's what we're
Yep,
calling him.
Tech 19.
Tech 19. He loves Cade. He had a lot of good things to say about Cade. And it's funny because who asked the question? I want to make sure I don't know if it was James Edwards asking Cade about his long term extension, whether or not he's thought about it. I don't know if that was James Edwards or not. I want to make sure I give credit. So please, if I have that wrong, comment down below and correct me. But when they brought that up to Cade, that's one thing I was very interested in because one of my worries for Cade, having a guy like Cade Cunningham, a franchise player, legitimate. I know people bring up the health concerns, which is fair, but you can't deny that he is a franchise player in terms of what he can do on the court. It's not like trust me, the NBA now, and you could bring up one player certainly has a lot of to do with teams having success. But I mean, it's a team game at the end of the day. You're going to need more than just Cade Cunningham to kind of catapult you into having success. That dude, you need to get locked down. Like
Yep.
he is one of the greatest things to happen to this basketball team in decades. So that's a must. Giving him whatever he wants, because if I was his camp, you could probably make an argument. Hey, kid, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of teams that would be interested in your services, and then teams that would probably give you an extension. Do you want to play in Detroit? And it seems like he loves Detroit, so that's a great thing because you haven't really had much to sell him on, to be honest with you. Two head coaches, no success, no playoff appearances. Seems like you're picking top five every year. It's a tough situation for any young player to be in, especially losing as much as he has, considering what he did at the high school level and what he was coming out. I mean, he was, one of the best players in his own class. So, yeah, number one is getting him around, keeping him around long term. I mean, for
Yep.
hopefully the rest of his career. He just had the only thing you really question about Cade is just staying healthy. That's it. If he can stay healthy, that dude's he's an all NBA all star. That's what he is for really a long time in this league. He's
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's self-aware too. Talked today about how, the biggest things he's looking to work on this offseason are, his conditioning, which, is definitely gonna be a big thing, that will take him to the next level, but, just those little things, that are the difference between, a guy, being, borderline all-star
Mhm.
to being perennial all-star, and, you look at all the decisions that Detroit has to make in the months to come, that is by far the easiest decision that they have that they've that they have to make in a long time, just because of the fact that, you know, they know for a fact if this guy's on the court, he is every bit the part of a number 1 overall pick and more.
Yep.
It's just
Oh,
about putting the right pieces around him. If
that's
you
it.
if you had Paulo Banchero on this roster, I still don't know if you get to 20 wins. I mean,
Well, that
Victor Wembanyama got to 22 with the roster he had in San Antonio. You think they're even getting to 20 with Victor with this roster?
no. Like that's the thing with really what Cade's dealing with is like you have players that are attractive in terms of what they can be, but you have no vets, which is another problem. Like the teams you brought up at least have guys that have played in this league, at least have some sort of success. I mean, even you brought up Paulo, he's got Franz Wagner, he's got a collection of role players. They got a deep roster. Like he has help, although
Yep.
Paulo's extremely talented. Like people, I think overrate that. Can he be LeBron James? Can he catapult the team all the way to the NBA
Yeah.
Finals? Like that just doesn't have to have that type of expectation for anybody. Like you have one player bring success is tough to do. I mean, even we remember Blake Griffin, he was in the prime of his career and he got this team to 40 wins. And that was with a better roster too.
Yep.
So I don't want to hear that stuff. I love Cade. He's a hell of a player. He is.
Yeah.
He's a keeper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of the next LeBron, those moments generally happen during playoff time, which Jeff, we are at playoff time. As of the
Yes, we
time
are.
this episode coming out, we will have concluded with night 1 of the play-in tournament, which by the way, I think we got absolutely fed as far as play-in tournament matchups this year. We got on the Western side, the 7th and 8th seed are the Pelicans and the Lakers. So we get that rematch from the in-season tournament. We get
Mm-hmm.
Zion versus LeBron, which is just a perennial matchup. And then the 9 and 10 game in the West is going to be the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors. It was a 7-game playoff series last year, which was a grueler. Now it's a one and done, winner goes on, loser goes home situation. So that's going to be an absolute thriller. And then on the Eastern Conference side, the 7-8 game is the Sixers and the Heat. So that's going to be fascinating to see.
Right.
Although Joel Embiid just tweaked his knee the other day. So will he actually be ready for that one? And then the 9th and 10th game is the 3rd annual Bulls Hawks Invitational for irrelevancy. So that's really the one playoff game I couldn't give two about. But
There's always one. There's always
yep,
one.
yeah, exactly. But Jeff, I wanted to real quick show you my bracket of my initial
I
thoughts
checked it out.
of you checked it out?
I liked it. I
So
liked it.
I will share my screen here real quick. Jeff, what stands out and are there is there anything that you strongly agree or strongly disagree with? I'll tell you 2 things. There are 2 series that I had the hardest time picking against, and you can probably guess them. They're both second round matchups.
Well, I looked at this in the what I immediately thought is how the Mavericks are playing, you have them reaching the Western Conference Finals, which in terms of a matchup, having the Mavericks, Luca, Kyrie, Jokic, the star power you'd have in that series, I'm already a fan. I know
Yep,
the East is a little different because we've talked about it here with Troy a lot, kind of who we expect to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. And we
yep,
expected Denver to be there, but to have you pick the Dallas Mavericks and have the Thunder reach the second round, I would love to watch that series as well. I thought that was interesting. So
yep,
I don't know, Dallas making a run. I don't hate it.
so
I don't hate it at all.
that was my toughest series to pick by far because when you talk about, the possibility of that matchup and, if you're asking me which team I am more confident in on a night in, night out basis, it's the Thunder, definitely. But
Mhm.
we've seen playoff Luka before. We've seen him carry a team with Jalen Brunson and a ton of really good guys. Don't get me wrong, Jalen Brunson's really good. He wasn't even close to the Jalen Brunson we're seeing right now when he
No.
took that group to the Eastern Conference Finals. And even then, they weren't nearly as good defensively. They didn't have as good of, like floor spacers. You look at the overall, composition of everything Dallas has right now. They are far better positioned, to make a run than they did the last time they made the conference finals. Oh, and by the way, now instead of Jalen Brunson, is Kyrie Irving, one of the greatest clutch players in the history of the game. Like,
Mhm.
you're telling me a team's gonna have to beat them 4 times? Like that's the tough part for me. That's when you get to like when playoff time comes around, as awesome as Oklahoma City's been. And by the way, like I like, full victory lap. I said at the beginning of this season, the Oklahoma City Thunder are my sleeper team. They could be a high seed in the Western Conference. They're the first seed, Jeff. First seed. They're
Yeah, that
incredible.
that
I
that was a
love
hell of
them.
a shot from you. That was half court. No pun intended.
Half
But
court, nothing but net. Like, I
yeah,
I couldn't believe that one. I'm not gonna
yeah.
lie. You guys even were like, "I don't know," and I'm like, "Listen, I get it. I agree
And
with
Jet's
you."
been healthy. Jet, I mean, that's another thing that's
Played
great.
all 82 games,
Yeah,
Jeff. Played
that's a
all
whole other thing.
82 games, but they are the youngest team in basketball, which even though they've been really good in the clutch time, we haven't seen them, seen that fully affect them yet. This is where youth shows, in my opinion. So that's why I made that decision. The other series I had a really difficult time picking was Knicks Bucks because
Mm,
you talk about a team that looks primed to make a potential run. The New York Knicks are playing awesome. I am the biggest Jalen Brunson fan, perhaps on the internet, but when push comes to shove, when you're looking at who's your best guy, who's my best guy, am I really gonna have the gall to pick against Giannis Antetokounmpo? Like that's what it came down to, and I was like, I can't. I
I
can't.
know.
I just can't.
Well,
It's
here's the thing, and I do agree with that. I think if I'm torn between that matchup, you're leaning Giannis. But I do like the Pacers to make that a 7-game series. Like
oh,
I
absolutely.
I mean, I especially with the Bucks and you have Doc Rivers, and that move was already questionable within itself, but defensively they're not great. And I
Yep,
just think the Pacers they play such beautiful basketball. And I think that matchup would be one of my favorites to watch
yep,
personally. And I think the Pacers could very well upset them, but you always lean best player, even though Giannis a little banged up, had that calf injury. We'll see if it progresses. And hopefully it doesn't turn into what happened to Katie and turn into a significant injury. You,
yeah,
you you should go with the Bucks, but
yep.
man, the Pacers. I
Assuming Giannis is good to go by that Knicks series, it's like it's
Yeah,
hard to
it's
pick
tough
a
to
but
beat them. Yeah,
again, like you said, it's like that Pacers series is gonna be really hard because you gotta think, the Pacers are not good defensively, but you gotta think they're gonna get better. They're going to tighten down this time of
yeah,
year. My only question with them too is, Tyrese Halliburton, we talk about Giannis's health. Tyrese Halliburton's been dealing with that hamstring all year long, and because of the all NBA requirements, because of the new things in the collective bargaining agreement, he's essentially been pushing himself to stay on the court. So, you kind of questioned if that at some point could come into factor,
Right.
especially with how finicky hamstring injuries can be. I have too many Chris Paul horror stories in my head to not at least consider that as a factor. But I wish it showed on here my like game breakdowns because like I have this being a 7 game series. The Thunder Mavericks a 7 game series. I have Bucks Knicks being a 6-7 game series. I have this being a 6 game series. Like, it's there are plenty of like you look at these matchups. I do not think we're gonna get a lot of sweeps when you look at like the way the playoffs are shaping up this year. But when push comes to shove, I mean, you look at who's the favorite to win, and as as climactic of an answer as it can seem, Jeff, who's better than the Denver Nuggets?
It's
Who's
tough.
better than Nikola Jokic? Like,
The Nuggets have turned into this team where, and it seems like the Warriors have kind of been dethroned in not saying with their success, but when you look at a team and you're like, I don't care what their seeding is. Like, I don't give a
yep,
damn. They can be first seed, second seed, third seed. At some point, you just can't pick against them, even against the Celtics. And they've won games not just decisively, but almost scary, with what their deficits have been, or their at least their point totals they've won by. But the Nuggets, you just can't. That's the best. You're picking the best player in the series by far, which is Jokic. So
yep.
I have no issue with it. How many games do you have the series going? What'd you say?
For the finals, I have that going 6.
Yeah, see,
So
that's fair. That's
for
fair.
me, and listen, 6 is probably the easy cop out answer, which I mean, whatever. But the when push comes to shove for the Boston Celtics, the biggest question I keep coming back to myself with is name that big fourth quarter win for them this season. Name like the definitive Boston Celtics like quality win because they won a lot of games. They were perhaps one of the most dominant teams in the history of the league in the regular season. But how many games in prime television against, top of the league opponents did you see Boston lose by double
Yeah,
digits
I mean the
or
Nuggets beat them twice. So
crumble in the fourth quarter? I mean, this is a team that we saw last year, crumble and collapse in the playoffs against the Heat when they were expected to make a finals run. I
mhm.
mean, for all intents and purposes, they were the favorites to win the championship last season. But now, especially, like the Eastern Conference is by no means, like an easy run. It's their conference to lose. But you get to the finals. As much as I like the cheat code for them, that's Kristaps Porzingis, and as much as I love Drew Holiday, who's getting in front of Jokic? And even then, when you have to put bodies in front of him, how are you going to even begin to guess where he's throwing the ball? Because almost every time he's going to make the right decision.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, the Celtics at home have been, you know, insane. I mean, I just looked; they have a 37-4 record, but on the road, it's a little different. So, and you're playing in Denver, high altitude. We say this every single year. It's tough to win in Denver. So, regardless of the regular season, in the postseason especially, I mean, I think the Celtics make it a close series, but I'm leaning, given everyone's healthy, I'm going with the Nuggets. I would pick the Nuggets as well.
Yeah,
I think
and I mean,
6 is a good number, but, and you're probably right, it's probably a cop out, but 6, you gotta give the Celtics 2 games. You at least have to respect them that much. You give them 2
right,
games. Could go
right,
7, but Nuggets come out on top, I believe.
yeah, one
Even if
hundred
it's in
percent.
Boston, to be honest with you. I just even in the 7, even in the set in game 7, I'm leaning with Jokic. I
And
just
even
am. Jamal Murray.
and even you look at health, like the Nuggets are insanely durable, man. Jokic
Yeah, they
played
are.
79 games. Michael Porter Jr., who dealt with back issues all the time, he played 81 games this year.
Mhm.
Like, when you have guys like that who aren't even dealing with injury issues, like, you're in a pretty good spot. So, Jeff, they're gonna be absolutely terrifying. But I
Yeah,
mean, man, that talk about this is the best time of year for basketball. And just to circle it back to, the original conversation, it really does feel like it is more and more becoming a important thing for the Pistons to even be relevant in this conversation again. Because the last time, Jeff, that the Pistons even won we're not even talking about a series, we're talking about a game in these playoffs. I was 11.
Well, that
I
would
am
make
I am
me
I am 26.
yeah, that would make me 9. So, yeah.
Mhm. Never
Mhm.
forget.
Mhm.
But no, that Pistons win, I mean, that
Yeah, yeah.
that win, but no, but in all seriousness, like, it is a legitimate thing when you have that type of streak looming over a franchise for that long. It almost becomes like the conversation you have with the Lions where it's like, "Oh, well, it's never us that ends up being in this situation." So, whoever's gonna be tasked to come in and take over that seat, they're going to have a lot ahead of them to make that happen. But
Yeah, lot of eyes on him. It's
yep,
something that I look at, and although it's a tough job for someone that's especially that's had success, but some guys that have had success like these type of opportunities to where it bolsters their career. If you can turn around the Pistons, your resume, phew, skyrockets.
yep,
It's great for your career. So it's a challenge. Some guys like challenges. Hopefully the Pistons can grab someone that hey can strap their boots on, get to work because we're not to reference the last team that won a playoff series, but going to work. But regardless, they got to go to work. That's what
yep.
needs to.
Yep, absolutely. And whoever that is going to be, Jeff, we're going to be here talking all about it in the months to come on From Half Court. Again, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like this video, like it down below, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the updates and coverage. But again, follow my guys on social media. Catch out Crunch Time Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This has been From Half Court. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys next time and be sure to subscribe.